Welcome to Lawyer of the Week.
This is a special edition of the Lawyer of the Week. In response to the report just released by the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing, we have this special edition to make sure that lawyers in the United States and everywhere take heed to their recommendations. Today we speak with Courtney Wylie, who is a participating member of the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing. Courtney gives us some insights into the process, working with the National Bar Association and the task team, and comments on the research behind this initiative. Welcome to the Lawyer of the Week Special Edition.
Hello there. My name is Pamela Deneuve, and I'd like to welcome you to Lawyer of the Week. This week, I'm very pleased to have Courtney Wylie. And Courtney is a part of a committee that is looking towards lawyer well-being. And she has really committed a lot of her life and career as a lawyer to leadership and trying to help lawyers to become their best selves while they practice law. So I'd like to introduce you to Courtney. Courtney, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I'm very glad that you're here. So let me tell you a little bit about Courtney. Courtney is currently appointed as the Young Lawyers Division Liaison to the Commission on Lawyer Assistant Programs for the American Bar Association and an appointed member for the Advisory Committee of COLAP, which is the Commission on Lawyers Assistance Programs. Prior to joining Drinker, Biddle, and Reef, Courtney worked at the University of Chicago Law School as the Associate Director of Student Affairs and Programs. In this position, she was primarily responsible for Keystone Leadership and Professional Programs and the CAPNIC Leadership Development Initiative. Before she joined the University of Chicago, she was an Assistant Attorney General for the state of Illinois. She practiced in the General Law Bureau Torts Division, representing state actors and agencies in civil torts litigation. She's also been previously in private practice, and she represented professionals in disciplinary disputes before state professional regulations and licensing boards. So based on her nominations by her professional peers, she was named 2014 and 2015 Super Lawyers list, an honor only accorded to 2.5% of lawyers in Illinois age 40 and under. So that's a lot. Thank you, Courtney.
No problem.
So happy to have you as the Lawyer of the Week. And we're actually having a special edition to actually let people know that the American Bar Association and many groups are interested in the well-being of lawyers. So Courtney, the first question I want to ask you is, what made you decide to become a lawyer?
My undergraduate degree is in communications, and I was studying to be a television producer. And while I was working as an associate producer, we had a situation that involved needing to interact with lawyers. And it was funny because I just really enjoyed kind of seeing how they thought and how they were dealing with the case. And at the time, my general manager made a joke that I was the only person that actually enjoyed meeting with the lawyers. And I should think about going to law school. And so, I kind of thought about it, and I, took the LSAT, and I did well in it, and I applied, and the rest is kind of history. So.
Oh, wonderful. Tell me a little bit about what your biggest challenges have been.
I think my biggest challenges have been probably struggling a little bit with mental health and how that fit into being a lawyer. I suffer from major depressive disorder, and for me, I'm a very type A personality, and I tend to be a very high achiever. And for me, I especially when I was a young lawyer, I didn't know how to reconcile those two things. And so I really let a lot of self-care go by the wayside. partially because I was both ashamed of my condition, but also too because I didn't know how to ask for help or how to get help in an appropriate way at that point in time. And so I think that was my biggest challenge, was kind of going through those struggles and learning how to balance both, and also kind of realizing that you can be really good at your job and not be well. And so that was, difference in that that's not necessarily a good thing to be either.
Yes. In my research and reading, generally bright, ambitious, and maybe even a lot of type A type individuals who may become lawyers have a tendency to be depressed. Have you found that to be your experience as well?
So, I mean, I think that there are certain personality types that definitely lend themselves to that condition a little bit more than others, maybe. But when you look at the research, I mean, lawyers go into law school with the same levels of depression as the general population. And it changes dramatically from that first year to when they come out of law school, in terms of our numbers of depression and anxiety and stress. So I think I don't think that we're more prone necessarily going in, but I do think that the way that we're taught to think without being taught the counterbalances of some of that can lend itself a little bit more to harmful thinking. For example, I mean, we're trained in law school to, find the issues, find the problems, find the flaws constantly, both in someone else's argument in a situation, but that kind of thinking is hard to shut off when it comes to yourself or a personal relationship or family or friend. And it is the way that you're taught to think is very black and white, very, win or lose, right or wrong. And that's necessary to an extent, but the other ways of combating that thinking and making sure that it's not spilling over into your personal life and you're thinking about yourself is not being taught currently with that, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, it absolutely does. I was actually thinking about a client of mine, and they're having a crisis in their family, and I can just see the lawyerly thought is winning out when it should be more a parental thought. And the lawyer's reasoning, the way of reasoning, a lot of time impedes progress within the family and on a personal level.
Well, and I think it's hard too, because I think, for lawyers, again, we're trained that way because it does make you a successful lawyer, right? And so if you're successful and this works for you in one area of your life, it's really normal to try and use that same strategy or tactic in these other areas of your life where it might not be so successful.
Right.
Like, because it's worked so well for you at work. So it's, it's this interesting dichotomy that we kind of have to deal with as lawyers.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you one other thing, because I really appreciate your honesty. I have had to myself overcome depression. So I understand a lot. And when I work with my clients, I understand a lot of what they're going through. And tell me a little bit about, what do you think the shame or the way lawyers try to hide this because of the stigma within the legal profession?
I think, well, and I think part of it too is the reality of our profession a little bit is that so much of being a good lawyer and being successful is your reputation. And it's also your ability to persuade other people to trust you, trust your judgment, trust in your abilities. And that's true whether you're trying to get a jury to trust you, or a client, or opposing counsel, or the judge. And the reality is that right or wrong, people do make judgments when they hear that you suffer from these things. And they do make the mistaken assumption that it can affect, your judgment and stuff if you're honest about it. What I think is interesting is that not being honest about it are the things that affect your judgment more. But
thank you for joining Lawyer of the Week. We hope to see you again next week.